The quiet light beyond the storm. The weight of silence. The rain began before sunrise, tapping steadily against the small apartment window, as if reminding Daniel Harper that another day had arrived whether he wanted it or not. Daniel sat at his kitchen table, staring into a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. The digital clock on the microwave read 6:14 a.m., glowing in dull green numbers that seemed louder than the quiet room. Across the table lay unpaid bills, a termination letter from his job at the warehouse, and a photograph of his family from 3 years earlier, before everything started falling apart. His daughter Lily, 8 years old, smiled from the picture with missing front teeth. His wife Maria stood beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. He remembered that day clearly. A picnic in the park, sunlight warm on their faces, laughter easy and natural. That felt like another lifetime. Maria had moved back to her parents' house 6 months ago after Daniel's drinking worsened and arguments became routine. Lily visited sometime. At least, that's what he used to believe. The rain intensified, drumming harder against the glass. Daniel rubbed his temples, trying to quiet the familiar pressure building behind his eyes. "What am I supposed to do now?" he muttered to the empty room. He had asked that question every morning for weeks. No answer ever came. Later that morning, Daniel walked through the neighborhood with no destination in mind. The air smelled of wet pavement and cold earth. People hurried past with umbrellas and purpose, while he drifted like a shadow among them. He stopped outside a small brick church he'd passed 100 times, but never entered. Grace Community Church. The front door stood slightly open. He hesitated. "Just to get out of the rain," he said aloud, convincing himself. Inside, the air felt warm and still. Wooden pews stretched toward a simple stage with a cross mounted on the wall. A faint scent of candle wax and old books filled the room. Daniel sat in the last row. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, he whispered, "If you're real, I could use some help." The word surprised him. He hadn't prayed in years. The silence that followed felt different from the silence in his apartment. Less heavy, less accusing. He sat there until the rain softened, then left without speaking to anyone. But something small had shifted. That evening, Maria called. "Hi," she said cautiously. "Hi." There was a pause. "Lily's school play is next Friday," Maria said. "She wants you there." Daniel swallowed. "I'll be there." "Okay," Maria replied softly. "Good." Before hanging up, she added, "Daniel, she still believes in you." The line clicked dead. Daniel stared at the phone long after the call ended. Belief. It sounded fragile. And dangerous. The climb through darkness. Daniel returned to the church the next morning. And the next. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he just sat. One day, an older man approached him. "You don't have to sit in the back," the man said gently. Daniel shrugged. "Feels safer." "I'm Samuel," the man said, extending his hand. "Daniel." Samuel nodded and sat beside him without invitation, but not intrusively. "Life heavy?" Samuel asked. Daniel laughed dryly. "That obvious?" Samuel smiled. "Only to someone who's been there." Over the following weeks, Samuel became a steady presence. They talked about ordinary things at first: weather, baseball, coffee. Eventually, Daniel spoke about losing his job, then about Maria leaving. Finally, about the drinking. Samuel never judged, never interrupted. One afternoon, Daniel asked, "How did you get through your worst time?" Samuel looked toward the cross on the wall. "I stopped trying to carry everything alone." Daniel frowned. "Sounds simple." "It isn't," Samuel said. "Surrender rarely is." That night, Daniel sat at his kitchen table again. But instead of staring at bills, he picked up a notebook. He wrote, "Things I'm thankful for. Lily's laugh. Maria's patience. A roof over my head. Today, without drinking. Someone listening." He didn't know why he wrote them, but he slept better than he had in months. Days became structured. Morning walks, short prayers, job applications, church visits, gratitude lists. The change was slow, almost invisible, but real. Then came the setback. 3 weeks later, Daniel received another rejection email. Then another. Then another. By evening, the old frustration returned like a storm rolling in. He stood in front of a liquor store for 10 minutes. "Just one bottle," he whispered. His hand touched the door. Then his phone rang. "Lily." "Hi, Daddy," she chirped. "Hey, sweetheart. I got the biggest role in the play," she said. "I'm the narrator." "That's amazing," Daniel said, voice cracking. "You're coming, right?" "Yes," he said firmly. "Promise." "I promise." After the call, Daniel stepped away from the liquor store. The storm inside him didn't disappear, but it passed. Samuel introduced Daniel to volunteer work at a food pantry. Helping others helps you remember who you are, Samuel said. Daniel wasn't sure about that, but he showed up. He handed out groceries, carried boxes, and listened to strangers' stories harder than his own. One evening, a woman receiving food said, "Thank you. You have kind eyes." Daniel nearly cried. He hadn't felt kind in years. Weeks passed. Maria began speaking to him more often. Carefully, cautiously, but with warmth. One afternoon, she said, "You sound different." "I feel different," Daniel admitted. "How?" "Less lost." Maria didn't respond immediately. "That's good," she finally said. The night of decision. The school auditorium buzzed with parents and children. Daniel sat in the second row, hands clasped tightly. When Lily walked onto the stage, she scanned the crowd nervously. Then she saw him. Her face lit up. Daniel felt something break open inside his chest. During the performance, Lily spoke clearly and confidently. Then came her final line. "Even in the darkest night, the smallest light can guide us home." Daniel's vision blurred. He stood and applauded longer than anyone else. After the show, Lily ran into his arms. "You came. I wouldn't miss it," Daniel said, holding her tightly. Maria stood nearby, watching. There were tears in her eyes. That night, Daniel returned to the church alone. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," he said aloud, "but I don't want to go back to who I was." For the first time, the prayer felt like trust instead of desperation. "I'm ready," he whispered. The quiet light. Spring arrived slowly. Daniel found part-time work repairing maintenance equipment at a community center. It wasn't much, but it was honest. Maria and Lily visited his apartment for dinner one evening. The conversation was awkward at first, then easier, then natural. Lily laughed loudly at a silly joke Daniel made. Maria smiled in a way Daniel hadn't seen in years. Hope returned quietly, like sunrise. Months later, Samuel and Daniel sat in the church again. "You look lighter," Samuel said. "I am," Daniel replied. "What changed?" Daniel thought carefully. "I stopped waiting for a miracle and started noticing the small ones." Samuel smiled. That's usually how they begin. As Daniel walked home that evening, the sky glowed orange with sunset. He remembered the man he had been, afraid, angry, defeated. That man still existed somewhere inside him, but he no longer controlled him. Daniel unlocked his apartment door and paused. For the first time in years, the silence inside didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. On the kitchen table sat his notebook. He opened it and wrote, "Today I'm thankful for second chances, patience, family, faith. Tomorrow." He closed the notebook gently. Outside, the last light of day faded, but the quiet light inside him remained. And it would remain through every storm still to come.